Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know how special you are to us. We couldn't do our job successfully without you. You're a vital component of the criminal justice system, and those who don't understand that are just out of touch with reality. You and I and our colleagues work in reality every day, and you help keep this criminal justice system moving along, which also allows us to keep the people safe. I'm sure we're equally concerned about similar topics and the changes that some are pressing in legislation. We've heard the threats of defunding law enforcement, the unrelenting movement towards releasing potentially dangerous and repeat criminals from jail without secured bail. We have seen bail reform attempts fail repeatedly, and I can talk from experience. It does not work very well. Pretrial, no bond release is not a new topic. We find history repeating itself because many of those proposing these changes were not around or old enough to know the damage we experienced the first time we tried this back in the day. Arresting someone for a felony is not really a deterrent anymore. It's an inconvenience at best. We're going to inconvenience a few felons today for a few hours. You see, when you release criminals without bail, you increase crime through victimization. You know why? Criminals see low risk and high profits. They continue to fail to appear in court. There's no reason to show up. There's no incentive for criminals to show up in court because there's no incentive to stop crime, because if criminals knew they got caught again, they would just be released again. There was no accountability and ultimately no justice. And you and I, the community, suffered. So let's think about this for a second. Let's try to think logically. And we know some of the legislators who want to pass jail reform are not thinking logically. If pretrial release without bail didn't work in the 90s in little old Polk County, with a federal limit of 394 inmates in the jail, why would it work now for over 2 million incarcerated criminals nationwide? Those 2 million people earned their trip to jail or prison, and we ought to be a wonderful, loving law enforcement community and criminal justice community and give them what they worked so hard to earn. But let's not forget bail reform attempts across this nation. Colorado in 2013, Alaska in 2016, New York in 2019. These communities, among others, have passed legislation to reform pretrial release without bond. And yet, they end up reforming the reforms because of the mass amount of money it costs the taxpayers, the increase in crime, and the recidivism. Alaska State Senator Mia Costello said, "One of the reasons for having laws on the book is to send a message to the community about what is and what isn't acceptable." We've gone the opposite direction, where criminals are feeling emboldened by this law. These bail reforms have consistently proven that they're dangerous for our communities, and they increase crime rates. Or take one of my favorite lines. When they start out with this line, you know they're lying. We're just going to release non-violent, low-level offenders. If you hear that terminology, be ready for the big lie. Just because the charge they're locked up for now isn't considered violent doesn't make them a non-violent, low-level offender.